Peace to the saints. Today we are here to discuss Elon Musk. Some of you may have just figured out that he's a rabid racist, particularly a white supremacist. This is something that I've been talking about for some time now, and let us go ahead and go through the evidence just to review the facts that were old to me but are new to you. And as we go through, if you have any comments, questions, objections, you can use the information below. And just for those of you who are like, Marquette, like, are you sure you didn't just think of this last night when he clearly did the Nazi salute 2 times blatantly before the entire world? Is that when you figured out he was racist? Oh, no, 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 my dear boy. In fact, you can see when I first had my thumbnail artist create the thumbnail for this particular conversation. This one was one that I already knew was going to have to be had. So as you can see here, this is back in September of last year. In September, I had my thumbnail artist create this one right here. So there you go. So there's your evidence that I'm not new to this. I knew it. I predicted it. And I often remind you guys that there are levels to things. The greatest among us are those who can see things before they occur. Then you have those who can understand things as they are occurring. And then you have the average people and the below average who only understand it afterward. Hindsight is 20/20. It's after it's been explained and broken down to them. But anyways, let's go ahead and dig into the evidence. This is a particularly important conversation because it references back to the Book of Dark Truths. This is a 2-day seminar that I did, 2 days in person, the Book of Dark Truths. And I basically explained how the world really works, what the real truths are that govern our existence, that rule our society, so that you can look at someone like an Elon Musk and understand his actual driving forces beyond what he's actually saying. People tend to say nice things out of their mouth. They say nice things, but behind the scenes, they do ugly acts. Elon Musk is a great example of such. Someone populate the link for the Book of Dark Truths for those who are actually seeking the truth, not those who are conspiracy theorists, but those who are realists and seekers of reality. We're going to ease you all in here. There's a couple of terms that you must be familiar with. And so we'll start with great replacement, this replacement theory, and then we'll move on to hard and direct evidence against Elon Musk. My first indication that I should be suspicious of him is that he's a white from South Africa. I've been around the entire world. I filled up 4 passport books, and I've been warned of racism when I'm going to many places. When I'm going to Eastern Europe and Latvia and Poland and Hungary, they're saying, oh, watch out, they're so racist. And frankly, I got there and I did not find that to be the case. I can assure you that there is one place that I've gone and I've seen racism consistently. It is South Africa. This is racism not only in the hearts of those whites in South Africa, but also in the minds of the blacks there. Both of them are white supremacists. And I remember I saw a tweet on X where Elon claims that there was genocide going on with the whites in South Africa. Ironically, I was in South Africa at that time, and I just finished trying to go into a restaurant to have a meal. This was in an affluent part of Cape Town, which looks like San Diego, not only for the development, but also because of the population. It's pretty much largely white, except for the people cleaning up garbage and the people working low-level labor jobs. And they wouldn't let me sit down for a meal. All of the patrons who were eating were all white couples and white families. And all of the persons serving the food were all ignorant Black South Africans. One of the reasons you often hear me disrespect the Black South Africans because I'm disgusted with their conduct and their current state. This is not to suggest that I support those liberal white women like Julius Malema, who is in fact a liberal white woman, a Marxist. He is an imbecile and also an LGBTQ supporter, and no doubt probably a Skittle Gusser himself. But anyways, I was in South Africa observing nothing but peace and tranquility aside from the apartheid level racism being executed by the white South Africans, which I experienced myself. And I was there in South Africa while Elon's in America tweeting about white genocide occurring in South Africa. I knew for a fact that not only was that a lie, it was actually quite the opposite. There was an economic genocide being carried on, which had started decades ago, and it was being carried on at the expense of the ignorant Black South Africans. That's when I knew that he was someone to keep an eye on, because he was lying. This is the number one tool of the wicked. I discussed this at length in the Book of Dark Truths. Furthermore, the white South African, the extraordinarily racist and wicked group of people. And mind you, I say this as one who's traveled Latin America, Middle East, Asia, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. And I've never seen anything like what I've seen in South Africa. So anyways, let's start with the great replacement theory. This is a very important discussion. Let's work.
Because you may come across some xenophobic messaging when you're doing your thing on the...
I want to clarify xenophobia as differentiated from racism. Xenophobia is supposedly the fear of immigrants. Yes, and sometimes it's true when you observe it in Africa, like, for example, with the dumb Black South Africans, they are xenophobic. They don't want other African nationals coming into their country. They think that it's going to cause them to lose jobs and suffer in the economy. This is how brainless they are, because 90% of the economy is controlled by the whites who have been there, who colonized, beat, killed, RAPED'd your ancestors, and you still let them there doing the same thing. Yet you so much fear the Shona people who come out of Zimbabwe. You so much fear the Kenyans, and you fear the Nigerians, even though they didn't colonize your people for decades on end and keep you repressed through brutal violence, you dummies. That's xenophobia. You're scared of other nationals and other immigrants. Now, racism is quite different. Racism is when you're in America and you say, well, you know, we don't like Mexicans coming in. We don't like Haitians coming in. We don't like Africans coming in. But, you know, Frenchmen, British, Germans, they're okay. That's not xenophobia. That is racism. And the particular strain of racism is called white supremacy, which is to say, it's not about you being foreign. It's about you not being white. And because you're not white, you're not right. That is what we're experiencing in America, if we're being honest here. In fact, we really didn't see any recent outrage with regards to immigration until there were the stories about the Haitians, some of which were trumped up stories, pun intended. So we know that the racism didn't get strong until the N-words were involved, until those dark Haitians started popping up. Then the racism and xenophobia got strong. But before that, it was kind of like, well, Biden's letting millions of people in through the southern border with Mexico. I don't like it. Then the N-words start coming. We got to close the borders. You know, it's quite interesting. And for you dumb N-words, hard R, that are listening to me, you're dumb. The way I define you as dumb is you don't rock with the ism. That's my definition of dumb. You guys are a problem.
The old internet. You all remember what xenophobia is, right?
Go back to Ireland, you dumb Mick. You remember that?
That was super grimy. Bro had hella aim. I think it's actually quite comical that they show this, but it is in fact very meaningful because the definition of white itself has evolved over time, and I speak of this quite a bit. You see, white is supposed to be a racial category, shall we say, Caucasoid. You have Caucasoid, Mongoloid, Negroid. If you follow me, you've heard of these, you know, fairly old anthropological terms used before, and they're quite helpful. But the truth is that you have a lot of dishonesty in these categories. You'll have the whites, they try to separate out the Jews as though they're not white. Well, if you have Mongoloid, Caucasoid, Negroid, which group did they fit into if not your group? Many of them have blue eyes. Some of them have red hair, kind of like the Irish, you see. So they are, in fact, white. They may have a different life way than you. They might have a different religion than you, but they are categorically white. That would be as strange as to separate out the Black American, the Nigerian, and the Somali and say that they don't all fit in the Black category. They clearly do. So this is dishonesty that you're observing in our day, and it's a redefinition of white. I'm not suggesting that the early whites, say in Europe or in the United States, identified with the Jews. They did not. They identified with their own subgroup, WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. However, to suggest that the Jews are not European or white is ludicrous, for they all came into the area that is Palestine from Europe. many of them from Poland, from Russia, from Germany. So this is just ludicrous. They literally came from Europe, and there's all the evidence in their names, if not only in their appearance. A lot of Jews have Polish last names or German last names. It's actually quite comical the way these people lie. I remind you all that you don't have to die to see devils. So you don't have to die to be in hell. There are devils walking among us. They are liars, and they come in all colors. And also you can experience heaven or hell based on your deeds here. And I promise you, being dumb is evil. These followers of Trump, a section of them, they've been against immigration because the immigration is not European. So they're not actually against your immigration. They're against Haitians. They're against Mexicans. They're against Chinese. They're against Arabs. They're against all who are not white. And that's the naked version of their actual ideology, which has been cloaked in the language of America first, being nationalist and all that stuff. Me, on the other hand, I am wholly against immigration until we reform our immigration system, and it should be reformed to one that only allows the cream of the crop. And I'll take the cream no matter which crop it comes from. I'd like to take the best of Germany, the best of Sweden, the best of UAE, the best of Africa, the best of Gambia, the best of Latin America. If they're smart, if they're capable, we'll take them. And I might make an exception for those women that are particularly gorgeous. That's just me, though. But there's no racism in my view.
Identify as white, started bringing up something called the Great Replacement. Put simply, the Great Replacement theory says that too much immigration of non-white folks to countries that are mostly made up of white folks is bad.
Now, this is an important concept, and this is why the Book of Dark Truths is such a critical lesson to help you navigate. You see, the Great Replacement theory is quite comical because it relies wholly on lies and also on a psychotically racist thinking, which is errant thinking and evil thinking. I'll tell you why. Number one, they're saying that they can't have non-whites come into white countries. It's not right. It's not fair. But that would make sense if we were in Europe, which is a subcontinent or a part of a continent. You see, the Europeans are such supremacists and liars that they've taught you that Europe is a continent when in fact it's not. So they have lied to you, teaching you that there's 7 continents when there in fact are only 6. The Europeans do not have their own continent, such as, say, the Africans. But their racism has caused them to tell you a blatant lie such that they could claim their own continent. But I say that to suggest this. If we were in Europe and we were saying, oh, we don't want to be replaced, we, the white Europeans, that would make sense, for Europe is the home of you whites. That's the factory of the whites. That's where you come from. And to be replaced in your homeland, I mean, that is a bit strange. I could agree with that. Europe for the Europeans, Africa for the Africans, China for the Chinese, all sounds reasonable. However, uniquely among the peoples of the earth, one particular group of people is particularly vicious. And they don't say Europeans, Europe for the Europeans. They pretty much say everything for the Europeans. Yes, they invade China and Asia. They took over the entire continent of Australia through utter murder and violence, evil, you might say. They did the same thing to the whole continent of North America, and they did quite a number on the continent of South America as well. They didn't skip Central America. Their violence spread there. Then they went to the massive continent of Africa, tried to wipe them out as well. There's only one people that have attempted such a thing. No other peoples can you identify as that level of vicious colonials to where they go and actually replace the population. Now, the irony is that you now find significant populations of whites in North America, which we call today America and Canada. And then they complain as though it's not right for them to be replaced or reduced in population, even though it's not occurring by murder, which is how they got here. Somehow it's strange that, like, all of a sudden we need to respect who's on the land. But when it came to the Aboriginals, or the Native Americans, you might say, or those that they wrongly called Indians, when they were about to be replaced by you through murder, it was all good. We didn't need any theories. We didn't need to protest. It just was what it was. From sea to shining sea, it was destiny. So this is an important thing for us to really think about just the nature of their lies and not to get wrapped up in their lies and their deceit, because they've been fooling you and I for centuries. And you must wake up from this slumber. But let us carry on for a bit, then we'll move on to the next piece.
Not only that, those who promote the Great Replacement theory argue that welcoming immigration policies for non-whites are part of a plot.
Now, here's the irony, and you should find this to be extraordinarily comical. They're out to get us. So you have basically, if all dogs were a breed, the Europeans would surely be the pit bull, which is to say, people do have them as pets, but they're liable to snap on you and kill you. And that goes for the owner and as well as the children of the owner. Extraordinarily vicious are these people. There's none that compare to them. And despite them being extraordinarily vicious, evil, I'm talking about RAPE, I'm talking about genocide was their invention. All of that, despite that being them, those are their inventions. They say they're out to get us. Who could be out to get you? You're the only one that's out to get anyone. This is why I take my time to teach. And sometimes you all don't hear me. My words fall on deaf ears. Some of you are still practicing the religion that you got from your European enslaver. You learned Christianity from your European enslaver. That's the only thing he gave you. He didn't give you ownership over yourself. He didn't give you freedom to create happy, healthy families. Oppositely, he broke up your families, sold your children, you fools. But he did give you religion. He did give you a Christianity that said you were meant to be slaves and I was meant to be the master. You think he didn't give you proper clothes. He didn't give you a good diet. He didn't even give you a human being's life expectancy. But he gave you Christianity and you hold on to it till this day. You're a fool. You're a real fool. And you don't realize that whether it's Christianity or Islam, at some level, these religions are not being spread because of the spirituality or the access to the divine and the goodness in them, but rather they are being pushed out as a form of colonialism to dominate you and control your thinking. You have the Christian God that has a Jesus that looks like he's from Sweden. Yes. Even though supposedly he came from the Middle East, thousands of miles away. But he looks phenotypically like a Northern European, such that your Christianity teaches you white supremacy and you view God as literally white. Or you take the Islamic route and they've pushed that out, whether it was through dawah or through the sword. And you understand that you can only really truly access the religion by learning Arabic. So then you have some curious form of imperialism and cultural dominance, in that Arab culture must dominate you for you to really even be a proper Muslim. Yes. And then within Islam, though you would all like to be on your deen real strong, you travel to the Middle East only to find that some of them are eating pork, many of them are smoking cigarettes and doing hookah. A couple of them are drinking alcohol. A lot of them are abusing their black servants, you know, the ones from Ethiopia and Kenya, all those other places, even the Philippines and India sometimes. But most importantly, you find that, hey, Ahi, your Muslim brother doesn't view you as a brother. Curious now, isn't it? Your Muslim brother views you as some poor inward from Africa that is only there to serve. And you fail to understand that these religions have been pushed out to you as a means of dominating and controlling, whether it was the white man dominating and controlling you and spreading Christianity and that culture, which is in fact white culture, such that when you celebrate Christmas, you're a black family celebrating the idea that a fat white guy is going to come through your chimney, which you don't have because you live in an apartment in an urban center, and give your kids gifts when really you, the dumb black person, is working on the mouse's wheel at a 9 to 5 day upon day with multiple jobs to provide for your kids these trinkets, and you give the credit to some fat white dude who doesn't exist and is as imaginary as the God that your Christian enslaver taught you about in their book, which maybe was missing pages. Come on now. Come on now. You want to tell me that Islam is not centered on the Arabs and Arab culture, and there's nothing wrong with that, except that you really, are they closer to God because the holy sites is in Mecca and Medina? You have to go to Saudi Arabia for Umrah and all these other things. Are they not closer to God? Are you not farther? Do they treat you like you are the same? I don't want to hear you quote what Malik Al-Haj Shabazz said also known as Malcolm X, I don't want to hear him say, oh, I went to the Middle East and they treated me just like a brother so fairly. You stupid fool. You're a famous N-word. Yes, they give you a pass. You're a famous N-word. Go there as a regular black citizen. See how they treat you. I remember when I went to China the first time, I went to Beijing. I was largely invisible. No racism, but largely invisible and irrelevant. Then the second time I went as a guest of the Chinese government. Oh my goodness. If I judge my experience based on that, I think China was the greatest place on earth. Fortunately, I went myself the first time, not as a guest of the government. I was invisible. The second time I was a rock star. That's what Malcolm X reported on, that rock star experience. He went as a famous N-word. He's a fool. He's a fool. And I don't want to hear anyone say anything other than that. He was only lifted up by the divine knowledge of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And when he left that organization, due to his own narcissism and selfishness, he basically was irrelevant. He was killed by the FBI anyways. I don't want to hear anyone think anything else. It was the FBI took him out. Let's not be fools. But anyways, let's get back at it. And this is not an anti-Christian talk. This is not an anti-Muslim talk. I read both the Quran and the Bible, and I share it with you. I reference both of those works regularly, and I travel extensively in countries that are very much so Muslim and countries that are very much so Christian. Yes? I'm just dealing with the facts here, if you don't mind. What you all don't realize is even things like Christmas is cultural imperialism. When you have people in America complaining about, like, oh, you can't say Christmas. That's really subtext for my white culture is not dominating. It's not saying that I can't practice Christmas, because you can. It's not saying that I can't go buy Christmas gifts and Christmas decorations and put lights up, because you can and you always will be able to. It's saying that not only do I want to practice Christmas, I want everyone practicing Christmas. I want the Muslims doing Christmas. I want the Sikhs. I want the Hindus. I want the atheists. I want everyone doing Christmas, because it's how I want to live. And it's how I want everyone else to live, because I'm a sick devil that is used to dominating. And I believe all of you are my inferior. That's what that really means. Yes, you know, it's funny the way you're taught history. You're taught history in a very specific way that attempts to remove the evil reality of European conquest. You're taught history in a way that is extraordinarily dishonest. The history you learn in the second, third, and fourth grade, and I know because I was an elementary school teacher, they have told the history in a way that suggests that North and South America were sparsely populated. And when the white Europeans came here, and it suggests that they came here on purpose, when in actual fact, there were certain winds that were emerging that pushed them here on accident, which is why that the natives here were called Indians as opposed to what they really were. That's because someone was trying to get to perhaps India. Maybe he was trying to get to India. So he thought these were Indians. Come on. And when the Europeans ended up here on accident, then they misnamed these people. And they also found that they could do their usual 1-2, which is RAPE, murder, steal. Steal the gold, steal the silver, and steal the land. That's what they do. And they murdered millions upon millions. We're talking about hundreds of millions dead. And for some curious reason, in the second, third, fourth grade, we just call it Thanksgiving and wear nice hats of feathers and, you know, commemorate the natives as though we're not standing upon their bones as we speak. You know, that's what the Europeans do. They erase your history and then they lie about who you were, and then they lie about who they are. They're murderers. That's what they are. They're murderers. They lie about who they've been and who they are today. They are still to this day vicious, evil murderers. And anyone who would like to come on and dispute this, I'd be happy to talk to you. I can run down endless examples in history. It should disturb all of us to even be among such beings. Anyways, carrying on.
Meant to either weaken or replace the political power and culture of white people living in Western countries. When I say Western countries, it's not just Europe I'm talking about. I'm also talking about the Americas, Australia, and New Zealand.
Now, I want to point out something to you. You see, white people only come from Europe. Only. But you have them widespread in North America, widespread in New Zealand, widespread in Australia. They invaded those places. murder. Now, here's the thing. What you all often don't realize is when you're speaking in coded language, when we say Western countries, what do we mean? I'll tell you. We mean white countries. That's what we mean. We mean white countries. Western is a code language for white. It's a racially coded language. It's a euphemism for white. Come on, work with me here. That's all that is. Don't act dumb now. Yeah, some of you are engaging in white supremacy and don't even know it. Also acknowledge Travel with Trey writes, thank you for speaking those facts about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm X was a great brother, but flawed as well. And that's what people don't realize. And what happens is when someone dies, they become an instrument of those still living. Woo, that's a bar. When someone dies, they become an instrument of those still living. Now, what I'm trying to figure out is why listen to anyone else when I can speak extemporaneously better than they can write? Why? Why even waste time? I should write a book of quotes. My quotes. When a great man dies, when great men die, they become an instrument of those still living. Marquette, what do you mean? What does that mean? Yes, when Martin Luther King dies, he becomes a tool of the United States government. Did you forget that's who he was fighting, dummy? Well, they have a Martin Luther King holiday. He was fighting the United States government. How did they all of a sudden start liking him? They didn't. They're using his image to fool the dumb blacks. Why isn't there a Malcolm X holiday? Why don't you know the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad? He's the one who woke Malcolm X from the dead. Yes? When he was committing crimes and imprisoned, had no knowledge of self and no respect for the self, lifted him from being a common criminal, made him the spokesman of the Nation of Islam, which is where he got his fame. Why don't they mention the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad? I'll tell you why, fools. They don't mention him because he had ideology, ism, he had organization, a nation, he was too smart, dangerous. They make him invisible. Then the FBI manipulated him and made him think he was a star and made him self-absorbed and arrogant such that he wanted all the glory. And then they turned him against the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, getting him excommunicated from the NOI. And thereby they removed the greatest tool of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, for he was not a great speaker. He was a great thinker. And then he lost Malcolm X, who was fine in terms of speech and rhetoric. And then what did they do with Malcolm X? Pow! Same thing to Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, and many others. Some of you think you understand. You know not. I hate when I see you fools in the chat. You've not even read 3 goddamn books trying to argue with me about Malcolm X. You know nothing. Shout out to Andre. Shout out to Keandre. And you might be like, Marquette, why does it get you so mad? Well, it's annoying because just imagine you're a father arguing with a toddler about what they should have for dinner. It's just ridiculous. That's why. I don't want to argue with people who get their knowledge from TikTok. I don't want to argue with people who tell me unsubstantiated quotes from Instagram memes. It's not reasonable. Shout out to Keandre, supporting the work. Appreciate you. I acknowledge JN. Peace of the Saints. How can Africans prevent themselves from being tricked and exploited? Number one, they'd be wise to get some knowledge of self and knowledge of their own history. You see, in South Africa, they have a very rich history, many tribes, though very few of the persons I met who could name their tribe could explain their own history. They have no respect for their own lineage, their own royal history. Yes? Who is the current king of the Zulus? Who is it? Why isn't there a king? Why is he not respected? The royalty in the United Kingdom is still respected and wealthy. Number one, knowledge of self. Number two, respect of self. That's the foundation. From there can be no exploitation. Number three, unify. Marquette, what do you mean? You heard of the European Union? You can travel through all of those little irrelevant European nation states and use one single currency. And most all the Europeans speak great English. And we're talking about from the UK all the way as far east as Russia. Not including Russia, but as far east as Russia. Latvia, Finland, Estonia, Lithuania. Great English. They can all communicate with one another. Now, some of you might say, well, Marquette, yeah, we have Swahili. Well, Swahili doesn't go that far, and I've actually not met anyone that feels that they're great in Swahili. Frankly, Swahili is not the language of commerce, and I'd even be fine if the Africans said, you know what, F it, we'll use English. And you might say, Marquette, is that not linguistic domination? Maybe, but I think there's more utility in it, and it makes it easier because a lot of mathematics texts, physics texts, chemistry texts are already produced in English. It just makes it easier. Now, here's the sad part, ladies and saints. This is why someone like me, someone who A, understands the book of dark truths and B, is willing to execute. This is why you need someone like me or Idi Amin Dada. Well, when you tell all the Africans, hey, love you guys, love your culture, maintain it, learn your own tribal languages, but every last one of you is going to learn English and you're going to learn it at a high level and every single school is going to teach it, people are going to start complaining. So then you're going to have to go King Leopold on them. You're going to have to go King Leopold in the Congo. Give out a few demos, then they're going to fall in line because the blacks, masses in general, but the blacks in particular, they're effeminate. So as soon as you go King Leopold, then they'll behave themselves. But it takes a strong leader to create this organization. What people don't realize when they look at the European states, these are developed states and they've come from feudalism, monarchy, and all these other things that graduated them to what appears to be democracy. However, in the case of the African nation states, many of them just came out of colonialism in the 1960s, which is to say that my grandmother is older than those nation states and as well as the state of Israel. So as a result, they still need to go through some of these graduations, and there is no doubt that autocracy is a part of that. And the reason that when you have a competent strong man in an African nation state, all of a sudden the Western countries have a problem with him. Why? They don't want to see that kind of progress. They don't want to see you progress, you dumb black N-words. You don't even want to see you progress. You see, you had the greatest black leader ever to walk the earth, the Honorable Robert Mugabe, Sir Robert Mugabe. You see, the West actually favored him. I do believe he was knighted in the United Kingdom. But when they realized that he actually loved his people more than the British people, then he became a bad guy. You see, so they had to destroy the economy in Zimbabwe and try to get his own people to turn against him due to poverty. This is the playbook of the Westerners. They've done the same thing to Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, and I don't like communists. They did the same thing to Fidel in Cuba, but Fidel was able to outlast these rascals. He did a hell of a job, but they put that island in poverty on purpose. They did the same thing to Venezuela, the same thing to Zimbabwe. They tried to do the same thing to Libya unsuccessfully. It's a little harder to do that when you have sweet crude oil now, isn't it? And so this is what they do. These people are devils. They always have been and always will be. There's only one thing to do with a devil, which is to spill his blood upon the earth. That's it. May I acknowledge Major Mind and Soul writes, you're cooking already, peace of the saints. Indeed. Shout out to Moises writes, Elon leached off of Peter Thiel, PayPal. Talk about it. 2 billion carbon credit to build Tesla. Let's speak on it. He might not be the genius he's been portrayed as, huh? Rolled over NASA employees to SpaceX. A shocker. A public to private entity rollover. Bought Twitter with government and private money. Not saying Elon's not smart. He's clearly smart. But is he Imhotep? Is he the brain of the millennia? No, I don't think so. He's Steve Jobs. That's it. Pico de Gallo. It's always the guys with no name and no photo. Shout out to Free. He writes, thank you for the knowledge. You are welcome. Shout out to Falcon. He writes, these Spanish conquistadores strangled that last Inca king after he converted to Christianity. Absolute animals, indeed. And the irony of the Europeans and their claim to be civilized are the most murderous, vicious, perverted persons on earth. And ironically, what they do is they call you what they are. They behave like animals. They live filthy, and then they call you uncivilized, filthy animals. Isn't that ironic? And oh, they're so good at stealing and claiming other people's cultures as their own. It is really quite remarkable. These Europeans are so dishonest that they'll say that Egypt is in Europe, right? Egypt is clearly in Africa. They want to act like it's in Europe. Then you have the Arabs want to act like Egypt is in the Arabian world. All silliness. All has been disproven. But these people are marketing masters. One of the great things is that you guys know I'm not playing games out here because I called this a long time ago. Then you see him come out and do this racist salute. And now everyone's like, oh, this guy's a racist. It's like, but how did I know that a long time ago? Maybe you other people shouldn't be in the public and you shouldn't be speaking to the public because you're just as ignorant as the public if you're surprised. But let me point out something to you that should really concern you. Why is it when you look at how the media is reporting on this, why does the media suggest that it's a Nazi-like salute? That's not a Nazi-like salute. That is the salute. And if you didn't see it the first time, he did it 2 times just in case you missed it. Okay? Now, I'm not suggesting he's a genius, but he's far from a fool. And I don't think someone with his experience could not figure out that this is a racist salute. In fact, it's outlawed in some countries.
By the way, you might want to check out my video about Western values when you get a chance. Simply put, the Great Replacement is the alleged replacement of whites by non-whites. It often overlaps with a larger theory called the white genocide conspiracy theory, which...
Now, here's the great comedy about this. You really don't see many genocides occurring that have nothing to do with white people. Anytime you see a genocide, it's either waged by Europeans directly, or they've reorganized a people, usually as a result of colonialism and or violence, and they've put people at odds. Rwanda, Cambodia. So you almost never see a genocide that's not directly enacted by Europeans or a direct result of how Europeans reorganize societies. But ironically, those people, Europeans, who have never been victim of a genocide committed by non-Europeans are bluffing and creating lies as though they should be scared. It's just not even sensible. It's not even sensible.
Which revolves around the beliefs that powerful people are trying to prevent whites from having kids. Often the conspiracy is blamed on, you guessed it, Jewish people.
And here's the comedy. When you look at, say, X or even YouTube, you have a bunch of people who are essentially imbeciles and they're trying to escape their own responsibility. And rather than admit that you have too much LGBTQ in your media, your government, and your schools, and LGBTQ, of course, homosexuality, in other words, is going to reduce birth rates, you fools. And you also feed your citizens garbage and portray it as food. You call it McDonald's, but it's really garbage. And then you see that the women are less fertile, the males are less masculine, and there's spikes in homosexuality that you promote on Netflix. And then you blame the Jews. Amazing. Amazing. The Jews have done everything. But here's the funny thing. They blame the Jews and then say that the Jews are not white. Well, in actual fact, the Jews are clearly white, and they also clearly come from Europe. So you guys are clearly lying. That's the level of lies. They tell you not to believe your own eyes. You can look at the Jews and see that they're white, but they tell you not to believe your own eyes. You're looking at them like these guys are white, and they're saying that they're not white. They're telling you not to believe what you can see. This is sick, ladies and saints. It's truly sick.
A mental image of a concentration camp. Now, obviously, if they literally did that, then you and I wouldn't fall for the messaging. Therefore, the messengers have to be a little bit more subtle about it.
And who are the messengers? They're podcasters. They're Elon Musk. That's who they are.
And lately, they've gotten pretty good at manipulating us. Here's the thing, though. Not only are those who preach about the Great Replacement theory manipulating us, but as it turns out, the entire theory is bullcrap. It's literally not backed by evidence at all. There is no secret plot to get rid of white folks, but let's just say that there was. Well, they must be doing a pretty poor job, eh? Since there are more white folks now than ever before. You might be thinking,
now this is an important piece. They talk about genocide, but there's never any murder. The only time you can observe murder, or shall we say death, maybe call it war, the only time you observe whites being murdered is usually when they're murdering each other. World War I, World War II, World War III, which is currently underway. That's when you observe it. And even Noam Chomsky points out that the Europeans have had wars among themselves for centuries, tons of them, because they're a warlike, violent people. Now, the great comedy is that they attempt to assign the nature of being violent to the blacks, which is comical because the Europeans have murdered entire continents of people. Yes. You guys heard of the Aboriginals? You may have never heard of the Aboriginals. Aborigines. Yes, those are the people who are original to Australia. And what do those people look like, ladies and saints? Well, I'll show you, because your teacher in high school and in college never showed you because they want to keep it secret. Here are the Aborigines. They're black. If you can't notice, they're black. Yes, they're a different kind of black, that's for sure, but they're black. This one's darker than I am. You'd have to call that black. Black, 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 black. That whole entire continent is supposed to be black. But that whole entire continent is not black. Why? Because the devils went in there and they did what they do. Murder. That's what they do. They murder. Is murder not violent? Then how then could they call us violent? When they murder entire continents, they exterminate entire peoples. And in fact, their viciousness is so unparalleled that, for example, in the United States, let's say during the period of enslavement, white families in America would not only lynch a black male, which is to say hang him and have his breathing and everything be cut off with his body weight on that rope, but they would also castrate him. They would take his genitals and cut it off. Is that necessary? No. Only if you're a vicious, violent, sadistic animal. And then just to add to it, then they would have a picnic. Yes, they would sit down, put out a blanket, and have the whole family eat while that corpse hangs in the air. Those are monsters. Those are devils. If you ever wonder, that's what a devil is. You don't need to die to see a devil. They are among us, and they continue to do their work. I don't want to hear any fake crime statistics about, well, you know who does more of the murders? Who does more of the violent crime? Hold on, white supremacists. Do me a favor. How many bodies have you caught in Ukraine? How many bodies have you caught in Libya? How many bones are we standing on right now? How many bodies did you catch while eradicating everyone in the Australian continent? How many people did you murder to take over what we today call Hong Kong? How many people did you murder to make it such that most of the people holding power in Mexico are white? You turn on Telemundo, they all look like Europeans. How many people did you murder? Where are those statistics? Oh, you don't count that as murder. You don't count your murder as murder. I see.
Represent a smaller percentage of the proportion of the world. Well, who counts as white isn't based.
Okay, now let's go on here. Now, the real question you should ask is, why is it that all the Trump supporters, being as fair and objective as they are, because they're conservatives, they're rational. It's the liberals that are emotional. We're rational conservatives. You need to go back to your country. Vivek Ramaswamy, go on back to India, boy. Vivek Ramaswamy, go on back. Get your hair wrapped. Obama, Osama bin, your name is Barack Hussein Obama. Did you say Hussein? Okay, well, guess what, Hussein? I'm going to need you to go on back over there to Indonesia, wherever you come from. No, I don't care where you said you're from. Go back to Indonesia. We need a birth certificate. They're all concerned with, as soon as anybody gets a little bit of melanin in them, they need to go back where they came from. But I thought this was about preserving America. America for the Americans. Elon Musk is South African. And not only is he South African, he comes from quite curious stock in South Africa. Yes? Someone let me know, did his father get with a single mother who had a daughter, and then he groomed that girl, that underage girl, and then slept with her? Somebody let me know. Somebody let me know, because I don't know. Shout out to Mr. Gordon. He writes, Elon has recently been exposed for faking being an elite gamer while actually being clueless. He got gamers to vote for Trump before his lies were uncovered. That's actually kind of funny. I'm not going to lie. Shout out to Elon, because that's diabolical. It's not even diabolical. It's just funny. That's an extreme use of the word diabolical, but it's funny as hell. Shout out to Elon for that one. I appreciate that. That was kind of enjoyable.
And then Steve Bannon lashes out at billionaire, says he should go back to South Africa. The comments, stay tuned.
Now you'll notice Vivek is not from India. Barack is not from Indonesia, but they're quick to call them foreigners. Elon's actually a foreigner, but no one ever calls him South African.
So here we go. Forbes. Trump ally Steve Bannon attacked Elon Musk, said he would do anything to keep the world's richest person out of the White House in a new interview with an Italian newspaper. Weeks after Bannon publicly derided Musk for his defense of a skilled visa program, Bannon said Musk should go back.
Now, that skilled visa program, it might sound good to you if you run, say, a tech business and you want cheap labor, cheap and convenient labor, you see. But perhaps if you were an American and you had children and your children are under the same lie that everyone else's children have been under for maybe 100 years now, which is that you go to university, you become high skilled, I don't know, maybe in something like engineering, tech, software, then you can get a high paying job because you are high skilled. But once we unleash the billion person population of India or the billion plus population of China, where they have more honor students than we have total students, then you can't compete, and effectively they drive down the wages, especially when they're coming from retrograde economies like India. And rather than even outsourcing, he does the filthy thing of bringing them all here, which creates more pressure on a lot of things, infrastructure among them. And then he pretends to be an American and pretends to be America first and pretends to care about you. Yes, it's such an extraordinary trick. And, you know, the only good of a person like Pat Bet David, who's also not really an American either, he's a stooge of the white supremacists. He has not even identity himself. He was shocked when the white supremacists that he interviews, like, basically said, hey, you're not one of us. He was like, so Paul, but I'm a Christian. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. Lesson learned, little dummy.
Back to South Africa, where he is from, asking, why do we have South Africans, the most racist people on earth? Why?
And I want to double sign off on that. And unlike many of you, I've been to South Africa, not once, not twice, not three times, many times. And I've been throughout South Africa, not just to Cape Town. We're talking about Joburg. We're talking about Durban. We're talking about many places there. So I have a good sense of the society, and I agree wholeheartedly. And mind you, you never hear me say, oh, this place is racist. These people are racist. You've never heard me tell that story.
White South Africans making comments at all on what goes on in the United States. According to a WAPO translation of Musk's interview with Corley de la Sera, Bannon, a controversial figure whose influence over Trump has been ebbed and flowed for years, says he would do anything to keep Musk off the White House. Is scale. Tom.
He was when he got out and got back on the microphone, got out after he prosecuted, but when he came back out, he's got a belly full.
You know, one thing that I think is quite interesting about PBD, he sure does know how to keep some whites and Jews around him, doesn't he? He's mixed with Iranian and Armenian, I forget, but whatever he is, he keeps some Jews and some whites around him. He sure does, and on payroll too. He's quite clever about that. Something to think about.
Well, fire. And the thing that he's linked his, 2 weeks of diatribe to.
Bro can't even talk. We're going to skip that because bro can barely speak English. That's insane. Good Lord. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. I heard that white genocide comment, which is completely ridiculous. Anytime Europeans talk about being victim of genocide, we just got to block it out. That's like an adult film actress claiming to be a virgin or claiming to be like moral. It's just ludicrous. So we then heard him. I saw him on X. Not only does he say racist things directly, he also likes to tweet out a lot of racist things. And maybe this is why X is so much more of a racist haven than other platforms. Let's take a look.
sort of patient zero for a lot of stuff right now.
Elon seems to really like this account. They've gone by a few names on the platform, but they share extremely racist content that argues that Black people are innately intellectually inferior beings. We actually settled this debate generations ago, but Elon Musk is helping to bring it back.
Yeah, so what you'll learn very quickly when you understand the world is that it's not about the truth. The truth doesn't matter at all. It's about marketing. It's about who has the bigger platform. And it's about what you can turn into truth. Yes? When we look at the ancient Egyptians, we look at the skulls, we look at the busts, we look at the mummified remains. You look at the earliest portion of Egyptian history, which is to say the portion that matters, the pyramid building people, not the people who came afterward, but the pyramid builders. Then we see who the true Egyptians are, and they're clearly African. We look at their lips, and their lips look like mine. The whites don't really have lips. That's not their genetic makeup. They don't really have lips. It's just not what they have. And especially if you look at the upper lip in the Europeans, it's generally closer to something like this. You look at all of the busts for the early Egyptians, the pyramid builders, they're all clearly African. And furthermore, when you trace certain building styles, building materials, you trace worship, you trace certain plant life, botanical evidence, you trace all these things. There's a scholar, and I have his book in my Amazon list. I highly recommend that one. It's if you go to amazon.com/shop/the saint and the sinner, he goes through a great portion of the evidence. And there's a lot of Egyptologists, including Jewish Egyptologists, German Egyptologists, European Egyptologists that all say Egypt is clearly Black, all the evidence. And we're talking about the Egypt that matters, the pyramid builders, not the people who came after during conquest, because Egypt was conquered by many Romans, Assyrians, Arabs, a lot of peoples conquered Egypt, but early Egypt. And then you look at the Americas, and you look at some of their ancient buildings, like you'll see there's some pyramids there. You'll see they have big stone heads with clearly Black features. You'll see graves, ancient graves there. And the natives to the Americas, they're generally short in stature. You'll even see this today with the people who have more pure blood. I think, what they call them, mestizos? I forget, but sometimes they call them indios in different parts of Latin America. They're quite short in stature. This is their DNA. Whereas you'll see short female skeletons and you'll see a tall male skeleton. And this is evidence of the Blacks who came to the Americas before the Europeans did. And there's clear reasons as to why and how that happened. You'll also notice I remember when I found this out when I was 16, I was reading a historical text, and even the ship sail design, Europeans, did they use triangular sails or did they use rectangular sails? Which one did they start using? And when they transitioned from using one shape to another shape, where did they steal that shape from? The Africans. The Africans were seafaring people. So anyways, you'll find so much evidence that proves conclusively that the Africans were there before the Europeans. And you can even find skeletons of tall Africans, royalty or explorers, being buried next to their wives that they took on who were native women. The evidence is all there. And there you go, amazon.com/shop/the saint and the sinner. There it is. And I do recommend you read those pieces. He says, but the devil says we were kings. There's some truth to it and there's some falsehood to it. I think it's just silly, though, to try to base all of your relevance on what happened in the past. I don't think you should allow anyone to steal your history. The Europeans are very good at that. But I also think that what we're doing today matters a lot. And that's why we need to build today, all of the peoples.
Louis Agassiz, a Swiss-born American biologist who believed that the races developed separately and were of different origins.
Now, I remember when I was a youngster, I read The Descent of Man and the Origins of Species. When you look at guys like Charles Darwin and Huxley and others, there's a lot of foundational knowledge, which is very fascinating. Not all of it accurate, but it is foundational. And what you'll understand quite quickly is that species cannot procreate with those outside of their species. Not naturally, not in terms of, the semen of a fill in the blank animal inseminating an animal outside of that species, which is to say that if human beings, say the white, the black, the Asian, were not of the same species, then we wouldn't be able to have children with each other. It just frankly wouldn't work. So there's a basic there. Now, there's no doubt among any of the scientists that human life started in Africa. And the racists, such as an Elon Musk, they really hate admitting that. And we see in their supremacist works, their supremacist literature, namely their portrayals of figures like Adam and Eve from the Bible, who reference the oldest humans. Adam and Eve are always portrayed as white, although white scientists say that the earliest humans were in fact black. And further, the evidence tells us that early on in human history, the only humans on Earth were black. There were no Asian humans. There were no white humans. There were only black humans. As the black humans spread throughout different parts of Pangea and the pieces of Earth separated, with water filling in and oceans separating them, and these peoples being trapped in ice ages, being trapped in certain climates, and certain genetic traits being more favorable, namely albinism, which is in fact a disease. Yes, albinism, the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that is a disease, which is to say that the white, scientifically speaking, is rightly categorized as an albino mutant. And so this mutation, the albinism trait, is more favorable where there is very little sun, when there are ice ages. They're able to get the vertical rays of the sun and the vitamin D much better than those who have heavily melanated skin or dark skin. So as a result, that trait will lend to survival, and those without that trait will die in an ice age or in a very cold climate and region. And the different varieties of man, if you will, the varieties were created and as a result of where humans settled or were trapped. But they all came from the black, the original. And this is something that the white supremacists just despise acknowledging, even though their scientists are the ones who acknowledge this fact. And still they portray Adam and Eve as white, which is just not even sensible. These are things we should think about. No, we should wonder why. Why do they do that? Why do they lie? Come on. Shout out to Dominic. He writes, Saint, being that you are a leader, if anything should happen to you, will the Sasson brand continue? Well, it's not a brand, it's a move. We do have Sasson brand, SASNbrand.com. Everybody go get your drip, you dig? That is actually a brand, but the movement is what you're referring to. He writes, Assassin is much needed on this earth. Indeed it is, and it is already here. That is our good fortune, and it shall spread, and it will be unstoppable. And the important thing when we say Sasson or nothing, because they will try to lie about us, they will try to infiltrate us, they will try all variety of things. That is why when we say Sasson or nothing, we cannot have hangers on. We can't have people who are half-hearted. Either you're with the ism 100%, you respect our hierarchy, you love those who are like us, or you're not a part of this. That's all there is to it. There was a brother in Saudi, good brother, and we had a consultation. He's done many consultations, and he had wanted to follow up about something. I said, hey, no cost, let's do this follow-up. And it was the morning of the consultation. I hop on very early in the morning for me, and he wasn't there. And so I reached out to him like, hey, you ready to go? And then later on, he reached out like, hey, I had a lot going on. Sorry about that. And he apologized. There's really no need to apologize because I know his heart. I know his heart. He's such a good brother, an honest person. It meant nothing to me that he wasn't able to make the meeting. It meant nothing at all. And in fact, I had sincere concern for him because we had done many meetings, and I know that he's not inclined to forget. He's a very responsible man. And so I felt sincere worry over what might be going on with him. Now, this is different than when you go out on a Friday, Saturday night and your girlfriend's like, I was worried about you. You didn't answer your phone. She's lying. She was not worried about you. She was worried about why you're not responding to her, why you're not giving her attention. That is insincere. That is a lie. I had sincere worry, and I was not bothered at all that he missed the meeting because I know his heart. We don't have to doubt one another because we're good people. And that's such a beautiful thing to be among those who are truly good people. It just removes so much strife, argument, misunderstanding, because we know we are the same kind of person. And that doesn't come from our color or lack thereof. That comes from our values and our heart. Shout out to Frank, supporting the work came in by PayPal. I appreciate you.
In his view, Negroes were of the, quote, lowest grade of humanity.
Look at this graph. It shows the follower growth of this account over time. And many of those peaks that you're seeing are the moments when Elon Musk engaged with them over the last few years. A simple
So what this gentleman is pointing out is the clear fact that Elon Musk not only spreads his own racist racial propaganda, which is white supremacist, but also very much so anti-black, which is not surprising. He's South African. This is how they actually are. This is their true culture. I've experienced it firsthand. This is not something I heard. This is something I know. And remember, I'm a rational man. I wouldn't go to South Africa, have one bad experience and say the whites are racist. I mean, that would be ludicrous and that would not be very manly of me. Men, we go based on evidence. And that is why still to this day, I wouldn't call P. Diddy a skittle guzzler. I've yet to see any evidence. I was talking to one of my ladies and she said, oh, well, you don't believe it? I say, I'll believe it when I see it. I've not ever met him. I've never been to his party. I've not seen a videotape of this. I've only heard, but there's no evidence in an era where we have cameras everywhere and he's extraordinarily famous. Why wouldn't there be any evidence? You see, that's why you need me to be your leader, because you are a gossip girl. And I teach you every day to not live like that and to not think like that. And here you are still being a gossip girl. But me, I will never yield to that. I will always ask for the evidence, which is to say the truth. You can live on falsehood. I will not. Yes, and that's why the blacks are such a despicable people. They throw their own under the bus so quickly. You have people who grew up on P. Diddy and Mace and Biggie Smalls. You have people whose families became wealthy on his efforts, and they throw him under the bus so quickly. They have no level of decency or community. If you're within this thing of ours, we stick by ours to the end. We will fry with you and die with you. You see, here's a funny thing. If you look at the Jewish people, for example, they have some filthy practices, such as they have something. I'm going to mispronounce it, so do forgive me. I think it's called a mitzvah b'peh. But essentially what it is when you circumcise the infant, the male infant, you cut off the foreskin, and the rabbi takes that bloody foreskin into his mouth. This is vile. Why they're sucking baby cocks, I don't know. But the rabbi takes the bloody penis into his mouth of the child. Now, you had a number of infants dying because one of these rabbis had, actually more than one of these rabbis had an STD. And because they had this STI, the baby's immune was not able to handle it, and the babies were dying. Several babies died. There were Orthodox Jewish women who said, I know why this is happening. That rabbi needs to stop doing these ceremonies. Did not go to the authorities. She told the community, and they said, no, we stick by the rabbi. More died. She had to go outside of the community. And when the authority, the U.S. government came in, they investigated. No one wanted to talk. That's unity. Am I saying what the rabbi did was right? Of course not. This is evil. This is filthy. This is disgusting by every measure. It's all form of demonic practice rolled into one. But what I'm telling you is that you cannot defeat a people who stick together. You cannot. And that's why we don't deal with half-hearted people. We don't deal with hangers-on, assassin or nothing. We don't disrespect each other in public. We don't disagree with each other in public. We handle things as men. And bro said a rabbi circumcised my son, but I had to be in the room. Yeah, okay, bro. I'm going to go ahead and skip all that.
Response from Elon gives a fringe account like this one access to millions of users, drawing greater attention to these destructive ideas and earning this account tens of thousands of new followers. This page is part of a larger network of race science.
See, this is a lot of this stuff is comical to me, but this is their effort. You see, the black people, though they have no self-respect, largely, they're greatly feared. And there's another book on my reading list by one Dr. Welsing. If you don't see it there, let me know. But I'm pretty sure if you click that Amazon link, you'll see it. And this particular book explains why the black is so feared. And clearly they're feared because you have a people, the black masses are very effeminate. They're not aggressive at all. As a mass, they're not organized. They're not trying to take down the whites. They're not trying to get revenge. South Africa is the best example of this. You have the blacks that are 90% of the population. The whites are 10%. The whites abuse them endlessly, viciously. What do the blacks do when they got in power? Nothing. You see, they're weak. So they're not a threat, yet the whites still will not let up. They still attack. And they put out all of this propaganda to deride the black peoples. Do you see the black peoples putting out counter propaganda? No, you don't. Not at all.
Advocates on Twitter, people who use out of context IQ data and cherry picked examples to make gross, sweeping statements about entire groups of people. And Elon Musk gobbles it up, pulling his audience of tens of sizes. He's done more to raise awareness for their cause than anything else.
People are not being convinced by the strength of the empirical argument. They're being convinced by the appearance of the empirical argument.
That's Will Stansel. He's an attorney, and he's been fighting against this army of bigots for
IQ, Americans, this is IQ 70, white Americans IQ 101, and people go, well, that's it then. This is the most basic statistical error in the book. Is the correlation doesn't equal causation.
Now, if you
So we could go on and on with that one. I'll go ahead, take a pause for the cause. We got a couple more pieces to dig in here. If you guys would like me to carry on, I'd be happy to do so. I'll give you guys some time to hit that like button. If you haven't, that's really a basic. And if you'd like to send in a question or tuition, we'll carry on with it. Otherwise, we'll wish you a beautiful day. But there's a lot more wicked things in addition to this that Elon is behind I'd like to address. And Martin Luther King, because he's an idiotic black person, he didn't even come up with this stupidity. He emulated Mahatma Gandhi. However, this works for Gandhi because his claim to a peaceful movement was actually a falsehood. Why do you say that, Marquette, you genius, you? Well, Gandhi was in the country of India, which now has an enormous population, and this is not a new thing. So where you had the British in India colonizing, as they like to do, violently subjugating the native population, as they like to do, those devils, knowing that their Indian population greatly dwarfed the population of the European colonizers, Gandhi only had to organize hundreds of thousands of Indian men. And upon seeing the latent power that it represented, the potential for great carnage, then the British colonizers said, okay, we'll negotiate, we'll change, we'll leave. But Gandhi was peaceful because he didn't have to be violent, because the Europeans could already see what would happen. The numbers were so disproportionate. So then you had Martin Luther King was in the opposite situation. He was a part of a minority population. Gandhi was a part of the great majority. So he took the strategy of one who was in the majority and applied it to the minority. So it just didn't make any sense. And Martin Luther King achieved nearly nothing in the way of real advancement for black people, for he had a limited understanding of what was actually ailing us. Yeah, so then you have Nelson Mandela, who supposedly maybe was taking some notes from other pacifists, and he basically screwed things up. The Europeans were dislodged entirely from India. The Europeans are still running South Africa, and it is a sad, dark, tragic comedy. Shout out to John, just became a member. May I also acknowledge, and let's welcome him warmly within this thing of ours. And the difference between us and others, when I say let's welcome him warmly, actually do it, please. Shout out to St. Ricardo, supporting the work, always consistent. I acknowledge Mr. Logan writes, Europeans didn't stop at people. They started hunting animals into extinction, destroying entire forests. Yes, indeed. There's a line in a movie called, I think it's called Planet of the Apes. And it's actually quite funny that they try to call us monkeys. But when you shave a monkey, isn't it white? Don't they have white skin once you shave the dark hair off of them? And when you look at which varieties of man are most hairy and least hairy, you'd see clearly that the blacks are not very hairy people. I remember the first time I slayed an ultra thick white cougar. She had rubbed my back. She was like, your back is so smooth. Did you just shave it? I was like, no, I don't grow hair on my back. I was the first black person she had ever been involved with intimately. And so I say it's just funny the things they accuse us of. Baseless quite often. But yes, in the Planet of the Apes, in this film, there is a line where one of the apes says to another ape, he says, do not let them breed in great numbers, For they will make a desert of your land and mine. They will make a desert. They will kill everything that moves. They will overharvest. The forest will be destroyed. The living beings that walk, that crawl, that everything will be gone. These people are monsters. And it's true. We've seen that it's true consistently. This is what they do. They destroy. Devils on earth. May I acknowledge Abdi? He writes, Charlie Kirk is another fake intellectual who is being pushed online. I sent you an email, a 50-second clip of a Muslim revert who had very good geopolitical takes. His name is Shahid Bolson. Okay. Let's see what you got here. Take a quick look at this. Oh, yeah. I've seen Shahid's work before. Bro is good. He's really good, in fact. When I was actually in the country of Jordan, and Jordan is a country that's wholly controlled by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. When I was over there with a couple of my contacts who are very well-positioned people, highly intelligent, not sympathetic to the U.S. government, but they're in business. And so at some league, they're in business with the U.S. government. But yeah, he was sharing some of this gentleman's clip. This guy is very sharp, this fella.
I don't know if you can think of a people who were more held back, more deprived, more sabotaged than African Americans. You took everything away from them and took them away from everything. They started in your country at less than zero, literally regarded and treated as subhuman.
He's speaking the facts. You know, the funny thing is I even argue that the Black American is the only American. What I mean by that is they're the only people who had the history, which is to say that their history before America largely doesn't exist. They were disconnected from it, root and stem. Whereas even the Europeans, they can trace back to Europe. I was dealing with one young lady who's very competent, but still a goofball. And she can trace back all the way to Britain, her lineage. And every white person, if they cared or if their family maintained records, could do so. Whereas the blacks, it is literally impossible. You cannot trace back to Africa. You are really a people created in America. And by a people created in America, what I mean is an ethnicity.
Not allowed to learn to read or write or anything for hundreds of years.
Hundreds.
But you see, they come from a people of accomplishment to one degree or another. Not a people of piracy and theft and appropriation. They come from a people who created and built and developed in their own land. And even though you did everything that you could possibly do to suppress them, to hold them down, to hold them back, and you're still doing that until today, nevertheless, I don't think anyone can dispute the fact that
Bro talking that talk.
African Americans have become a global cultural superpower. Culturally,
This is something I've said before. The Black American is the most influential ethnic group on the planet Earth that has ever existed. That is a fact.
they're a superpower. Whatever cultural soft power that America has in the global South, it's African American.
There's no doubt about that. That is not contested by anyone with common sense, but there are many without common sense. Thank you for sharing that. May I acknowledge Limitless Man supporting the work. Also, shout out to Minds Like Parachutes. Good to see you again. Been a little while. He writes, good day. Trump launched a coin 4 days ago. I was unaware. And the early birds got a bag. That's kind of how that goes. I didn't find out until later. In the future, how can I too be in the know when a coin is pumping early so I don't miss out? Well, you see, these coins are, I don't want to use the term scam, but let's say it's not good business. Whether we're talking about these initial coin offerings or we're talking about NFTs, which whatever happened to that, seems like they're out of vogue now. But this is not real business and it's not real value. They're not backed by assets and they are pump and dumps. And you'd be a chump to really get involved in any of this unless you're on the inside. So I don't recommend it. I acknowledge Aubrey supporting the work. Shout out to Nikki coming through as usual. Got a new profile photo. PK writes, anyone who lets their kid become a dun is like, right. I agree with you. And it's like we forget that while he's portraying himself as a conservative darling, his own child is the clear representation of his failings as a man, as a parent, as a leader, as an ideologist. I acknowledge, stop playing Trey. He writes, do you foresee a day when the assassin will physically battle against the wicked? Peace of the saints. Yes. Yes, I do. It isn't necessary, but I do believe it will happen. And the reason that I believe that is because you're going up against those who are unwise and very wicked, and they will certainly become violent. Our good fortune is that it will take time for that to happen, and by then we will have amassed so much advanced organization that it will just be a formality. They will already be dead ideologically. They will be dead in terms of influence. And it'll basically be a corpse that's trying to fight us. And then we will just put the final nail in the coffin. We already are so strong, and people have not the foggiest idea of what we're actually doing. There are those who look at what I'm doing and they think that I'm here to entertain you. They think that I'm going to be a celebrity. They think that any of that matters. And they don't realize if I do a reaction to a video or if I'm cracking jokes, it's only to expand our reach. So people look, but they don't see. May I acknowledge Kyle? He writes, thank you for speaking up on Elon. I've been noticing this for a while. Also, can you re-upload your reaction to the Montgomery Riverfront brawl? I remember dying laughing, but I can't find it. If you're a member, it should be accessible to you. That is definitely one that I enjoyed. That was funny too. I had a good laugh on that one. That was one of the many things that have been suppressed by the Google Corporation. So I thank those of you who use this information below to support. Shout out to Mr. Mohammed. Comes in by Venmo. He writes, peace of the saints, pure, unadulterated truth being spoken. Are you familiar with any of Dr. Wesley Muhammad's works? I am not familiar with his in particular. I've heard the name. I think he's of the NOI. I find that a lot of insightful perspectives. It's usually just something that roots from what you've already heard from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad or from the Honorable Louis Minister Farrakhan. So I generally don't keep up with that stuff. Also, that's a dying organization, unfortunately. Farrakhan has not been really good at nourishing it. And in fact, I do believe that despite Farrakhan being an extraordinarily talented and brilliant man, someone I admire greatly, and if he walked into this room, I'm asking for an autograph and a picture. You heard me? I want a picture and an autograph. However, he is also responsible single-handedly for the destruction of that great historical institution in the Black community. Not only the Black Americans, but globally. They had global reach. Even Muammar Gaddafi offered $1 billion to give to Farrakhan to help the Black people of America. The United States government denied that and disallowed it. But the reason I speak of Farrakhan destroying the Nation of Islam is because he partnered with L. Ron Hubbard's organization called Scientology, which is one of the most ridiculous cults that was run by a guy who basically made his career on writing fictional stories about aliens, about all this sci-fi stuff. So it's no surprise that someone who makes up lies and fake stories, and also, mind you, was on the run from the government, it's no surprise that he would create a fake religion based on far-off weird stories. If you've ever read this particular book by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which is indeed, I believe that is also on that link, my Amazon link, amazon.com/shop/the Saint in the Center. I have that link just for your convenience. It doesn't make me money. But it doesn't make me money. I think it makes like 15 cents or something, like something ridiculous. I don't even know if or how much they pay me, but it's just an easy way to organize the books where you guys can buy them. But the fact of the matter is, in a very foundational work that was offered by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he has some statements in there that are very clear on the type of people you should work with, you should regard as friends, and the kind of people you should not work with, you should regard as enemies eternally. And Farrakhan violated that just in the most egregious way in partnering with Scientology and thereby melding their theology with Scientology. And he did that as really a survival technique because the books, the finances of the NOI have been mismanaged. I remember when I was a youngster and I was very much so involved in politics and political movements. And I had visited many of the Mohammed mosques from Oakland to Compton to Chicago, Mosque Mariam, and many others, and Baltimore as well. And it used to be that the brothers would stand on the corners, near the freeway entrances and the busy streets, and they would sell bean pies. And that's how the organization sustained and financed itself. Under Farrakhan, they declined in popularity. Their population reduced as a result. Their finances were neglected and mismanaged. All the businesses they used to run restaurants, they used to run all kinds of things that served not only their population, but also the community. And as a result, all of that withered away. And then they got in bed with Scientology, basically for the money. And he really destroyed something historical. It's quite sad to see.
You encounter this content in the wild. There are graphs and academic sounding language saying that IQ data proves that people of European descent are intellectually and genetically superior. You may know that it's wrong, but you may not have the language for it. So I reached.
Well, it's not about the language, it's the research. You see, the European race scientists, they've been at this for a long time. It's actually quite comical because these people are such psychotic racists that they'll do anything, including lying, to portray themselves as superior and others as inferior. They used to have a theory, which I'll share with you, and this one is pretty ridiculous. They theorized that head size was something that determined intelligence. Yes, the size of your cranial cavity. And they said, well, since Asians have the largest heads, then, proportionally, so that's why Asians are so smart. And, the second largest heads are the whites and the smallest heads are the Africans. So that's why they're so dumb. Only to eventually find out that the Bushmen, which there's a certain group of Africans, had the largest heads of all proportionally. And then once they figured that out, they're like, oh, that theory's wrong. Actually, that's not quite right. That's not quite right. Then they created a new theory. And this is what we see consistently among the racists, is that as soon as a black group of people doesn't fit their pseudoscience, and they redraw it, because they're seeking an outcome based on their emotions.
Reached out to Dr. Sasha Gusev.
My name is Sasha Gusev. I am an associate professor at the Harvard Medical School. I am a statistical geneticist by training.
I asked him if there was any scientific legitimacy to the claims that these people were making.
So I think there's a couple of ways to think about it. One is this basis in concept of race, fundamentally the evolutionary model that
this guy is like a bit too nerdy and unpleasant. Let's carry on to the next one. Let's get back after this work. I want to talk about this first, actually. Let's talk about this boxable thing. So this is why you shouldn't trust this guy. Number one, he's, Adolf was a guy who was largely ideologically driven. He wasn't driven by money, though he did steal a lot of fine art from throughout Europe, including France and Paris. He looted many of the European capitals. He stole a lot. This is the European way. But money wasn't his driving force. It was really power and also a true belief in the white and a sincere hatred for the Jews. Sincere. And we can track this through his history, through his writings, and of course, through his behavior and his associations. So we know what was driving him. He wasn't a business guy at all. You can't find that in his history at any level. He was a failed artist. He had many interests. Went into the military. He was not a business guy. And in fact, you have to remember the Nazis were socialists, right? But Elon is a business guy, and his history is all about business, and the money obviously matters, and he finds significance and power through money. So what we have here is that he has yet another opportunity to make money, but it's at our expense, and he's trying to reorganize the way that Americans live. You see, the Europeans, they're used to living in close quarters, all squished up in overpopulated cities. And they have small cars, small roads, small houses, everything small. Conversely, the Americans, we have everything big, SUVs, big roads, big country, we have room, we have space. And he's trying to basically reorganize the way we live such that we all either live in tenements, apartments, kind of like a New York situation. So the real estate guys can maximize their money by building upward, and it also increases the price of land dramatically. And even for those who do not want to live in apartments, he's going to create these mini boxable houses that are very low quality, very low cost, and you can afford them. And he's found yet another way to profit off of your misery and keep you living in a way that is largely inhuman and uncomfortable and not American fundamentally. So here is Boxable.
It's finally happening. The much anticipated $10,000.
Did you know that Amazon has a...
My fault, give me a second. Now here's the funny thing. It said the much anticipated $10,000 house. Is a $10,000, they say it like we want to live in a $10,000 house. No one wants to live in a $10,000 house. But when you have our wicked political class and they do such a bad job that you have runaway inflation and you have low incomes because Elon Musk is bringing in all these Indians and all these other people who are not low skill labor, they're high skill labor. So even the educated class in America can't even find jobs that can sustain them. So you got inflation, you have high skill immigration, limited jobs, low pay. And now he's saying, oh, you guys are poor. I'm going to give you $10,000 houses. Like that's what we want. No, we don't want $10,000 houses, buddy. We would prefer to be in $1 million houses. It's just that we're not earning millions of dollars because you guys essentially have scab labor here. Whether we're poor and you bring in low income labor from Latin America, or we're would be middle class or well off and you bring in high skilled labor from India. It's a scam on both ends. And so they're burning both sides of the candle. And that's why you guys, one of the reasons you're in the situation that you're in. And then he tries to market it like he's helping you.
So Elon Musk just purchased this foldable home for $50,000.
The Boxable rumor.
I do actually have a Boxable, yeah.
You do?
Some prototype Boxable that's down in South Texas.
It's finally happening.
Now, here's the thing. He talks about Texas. Those of you who are in the know, you know he builds campuses for his products to be manufactured. And then, of course, you want your employees there. So you create this kind of temporary housing situation, which is really actually permanent, but don't tell them. And they live like animals and you get to work them to death. And you basically have created his own city. He's already done that 1.5 times. And he has essentially total control over these people. This is not a good thing. This is a very wicked thing that many of you are not seeing.
Much anticipated $10,000 house by Elon Musk is officially hitting the market.
A local startup says a box will change the way homes are built.
It's called Boxable.
Now, is that a home? If it's essentially a box, is that a home? You see, because last I checked, people who live in boxes are called bums. Yes. When I grew up in Los Angeles, if you live in a box, you're a bum. Yes. And now they're trying to make all of us live in boxes as though this is something we want. And they're saying it's only $10,000 as though they're doing us a favor, as though we would like to live in a $10,000 house. Elon Musk is a great threat, for he is driven purely by money. He is also a rabid white supremacist who is not even American. He's from South Africa, and he pushes racist theories on X, also known as Twitter. He is not someone we can trust. He does need to be deported, and along with him need to go his ideas.
So this home right here takes less than 1 hour to build. Let me explain how this works.
And it's set to revolutionize the future of affordable living.
That was a put.
Now, America, you have to remember, because it's kind of hard nowadays, America is not about affordable living. America is called the land of opportunity. People come here to get rich. America is about thriving. It's about succeeding. It's not about getting by. That's kind of what Europe is on. That's their thing, is make sure that the poor are not too poor. Our thing is, how do you get rich? And in fact, that's what Elon did. He came here and got rich.
Pretty big deal. There was Twitter and others engaged in active suppression of information that was relevant to the public.
Its foldable home in a box will cut costs for builders and home buyers.
Designed by Musk's company.
You hear that? That was real low key. It cut costs for builders and home buyers. What it really does is it cuts costs dramatically for builders and increases their market. Like they can sell to a much higher number of persons. And because it takes up less land, they can stack these things up and they can parcel out the land much smaller. Before, maybe you can only stack people up in New York and in Manhattan and Chicago and LA and San Francisco. And now you could even have people out in Texas. You can get you an acre of land and you can pop 30 of these little boxables on there and really maximize your profits. It's not for the people. No one wants to live in a box. Shout out to Travis, supporting the work via Venmo. He writes, I was brought here a slave, but I'll leave here a pharaoh. Peace of the saints. Okay. May I acknowledge? Shout out to Mr. Ayala. He writes, thoughts on Trump's ERS, not familiar. He writes, and Doge implementation. I think we've yet to see what these entities are really going to do. So we'll have to keep our eyes open for that. Let me go ahead and get over to Elon's Hitler
Now
salute.
Taxes is getting the TurboTax app and filing your taxes yourself 100% free. If you
And I just want to say thank you for making it happen.
So blatant.
Thank you.
Look at this. That was so weird and awkward. There's no way anyone does that accidentally. But the weird thing is people are saying he's accused of it instead of saying he did it. No, that's what he did. He's not accused of it. Do it again. Nazi. That's so weird.
My heart goes out to you.
It's like, that is the most awkward thing. No one does that on accident. Like, come on. This is ridiculous. But the media is being so nice. He's accused of doing a Nazi salute. It appears he's doing a Nazi salute. Give me a break. Give me a break. Ladies and saints, it's been a pleasure to have this time of fellowship with you all. Let us end this with our tradition, the Creed of the Assassin. Repeat after me with full conviction, knowing this is true of you. The Creed of the Assassin. I'm going to be who I truly am because I am remarkable. And I'm going to strive every moment to show the greatest part of who I am. Peace of the saints. Until next time.